Have you ever wondered why the very people who once adored a leader later turn against them with venom? Why crowds that once cheered eventually boo? Why movements that promised hope often end in disillusion? I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine a leader who rises not because they are perfect, but because people need someone to follow. At first, this leader feels like a savior, a reflection of the people's deepest desires. But time passes. Slowly, cracks appear. The same crowd that once lifted this leader onto a pedestal begins sharpening knives. You've seen this before, perhaps not on the grand stage of politics or history, but even in your own life. A teacher admired, a friend respected, a boss once trusted. Over time, their flaws became unbearable, almost offensive, until respect turned into resentment. It's not an accident. Plato, thousands of years ago, already warned us, every generation eventually turns against its leaders. And the reason is far darker than most of us are willing to admit. Plato lived in Athens, a city obsessed with freedom and democracy, but also with gossip, power, and betrayal. He watched as the very citizens who praised Socrates later condemned him to death. He noticed a pattern. People don't just follow leaders, they project onto them their deepest hopes and fears. Leaders become vessels, mirrors of our desires, and that's where the problem begins. Because once reality collides with illusion, disappointment becomes unbearable. The people who once worshipped a leader feel deceived, even if they deceived themselves from the beginning. And then, they turn. They attack. They destroy the very figure they once begged to save them. It sounds political, but isn't it also deeply personal? Think about how quickly we sour on people we once adored, the friend who let us down, the parent who failed to be the hero we imagined, the partner who turned out to be human instead of perfect. Each time, the betrayal feels personal, even though it's simply the unveiling of truth. Plato described this cycle in the Republic. He warned that democracy itself, so intoxicating, so filled with promise, contains the seeds of tyranny, because in a democracy, people crave absolute freedom. They want to be free from all constraints, from all authority. But in that hunger for freedom, they also crave someone who can embody their desires, someone who looks like the answer to their chaos. And when that leader inevitably fails to deliver the impossible, the crowd turns rabid. What's frightening is that this pattern doesn't just happen in politics, it's woven into human psychology. Nietzsche once said that when we stare at our idols long enough, we either kill them or become them. Why? Because our unconscious is filled with impossible expectations. We don't want leaders, we want gods in human form, and when they fail to play God, we crucify them. History offers countless examples. Julius Caesar, once adored by the Roman masses, stabbed by those closest to him. Gandhi, praised as a saint, yet criticized relentlessly in his final years. Martin Luther King Jr., loved, hated, assassinated. Even today, we watch celebrities rise and fall, as if society delights in building people up only to tear them down. And yet, here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not really about the leaders. It's about us, about the shadow in human nature that prefers to project blame outward rather than face the void within. We place impossible weight on others because we can't carry it ourselves. We demand that they embody what we secretly lack: strength, vision, morality, perfection. But no human being can hold that weight, and so the collapse is inevitable. There's a psychological phenomenon at play here: idealization and devaluation. In relationships, in politics, even in families, we swing between extremes. First, we idealize someone. They're perfect. They'll save us. They'll never disappoint us. And then, once reality breaks through, we devalue them. Suddenly, they are the enemy. The same person who once felt like salvation now feels like betrayal. Do you see how dangerous this cycle is? It means we are destined to repeat betrayal over and over unless we become conscious of it. Leaders will rise, leaders will fall, and each generation will believe the betrayal is unique, when in truth, it's the oldest story in human history. Plato, Machiavelli, and even Bonhoeffer knew that leadership is never just about power. It's about the illusions of the crowd. Bonhoeffer, who resisted the Nazi regime, wrote about the stupidity of the masses, how people surrender their reason, their morality, their responsibility, and project it onto a leader. And once that leader cannot hold the weight of their surrender, they are discarded like trash. It's uncomfortable to admit, but maybe the betrayal is not only inevitable, it's necessary. Because when a generation turns on its leaders, it forces society to confront uncomfortable truths. It strips away illusions. It exposes the fragility of authority. And in that painful collapse, new forms of wisdom can emerge. But for the leader, the collapse is a tragedy. They are left broken, abandoned, destroyed by the very people they tried to serve. So, what does this mean for you? It means that your disappointment in others is not always about them. Sometimes it's about the impossible standards you secretly place on them. The reason you feel betrayed might not be because they failed, but because you expected them to be something no human could ever be. It also means that if you ever step into a role of leadership, whether in your family, your career, your community, you must accept this dark truth. Admiration is always temporary. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. You will be idealized, and then you will be hated. The only question is how you carry yourself when the crowd turns. Nietzsche put it simply, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. But maybe we should add, whoever becomes a leader should remember that in the eyes of the crowd, they are destined to become a monster, no matter what they do. Now let me leave you with this. The next time you feel disappointed by someone you once admired, pause. Ask yourself, is it really their failure, or is it your disillusionment? Did they betray you, or did your illusions simply collapse? And the next time you find yourself putting someone on a pedestal, whether it's a teacher, a partner, a leader, even a friend, remember Plato's forgotten warning. The pedestal always crumbles. Admiration always curdles into resentment. The cycle always repeats. Unless we learn to see leaders not as gods, not as saviors, but as humans, flawed, fragile, imperfect, like ourselves. If we could do that, maybe betrayal would no longer be inevitable. But until then, every generation will continue to turn against its leaders, just as Plato said, and just as you've seen with your own eyes. The question is not whether leaders will fall. The question is whether we will ever stop demanding that they be more than human.